Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this webinar hosted by the education team at the Royal Academy of Engineering. Our goal here at the Academy is to harness the power of engineering and technology to build a sustainable society and an inclusive economy that works for everyone. My name is Scott Atkinson, and I manage the Connecting STEM Teachers Programme, which was the Academy's national schools programme, which ran for 11 years, from 2011 to 2022. Currently, I oversee our schools engagement programmes in South Wales and Scotland, and I'm delighted that we're here hosting this event with you today. And I'd like to say thank you to everyone for joining. I'm going to be introducing our speakers, our wonderful speakers. But before I do, just a little bit of housekeeping. There isn't much. We're going to be splitting this session into two parts. So first, we're going to have a presentation from Dr. Clare Gartland and Dr. Tuba Gokpinar, who evaluated the Connecting STEM Teachers programme and are the authors of the recent report using STEM teacher networks in teacher professional development. In the second half, we welcome Kate Finley. Kate is was one of the 48 regional Connecting STEM teacher coordinators who built an extremely effective and highly valued network of schools in Norwich and trained teachers in interdisciplinary practices across Norfolk. So welcome. We aim to make the session as interactive as possible. So throughout the hour, we'll be posting poll questions and addressing questions from you, the audience. So please feel free to submit your questions in the Q&A function and the chat room. Upvoting others' questions as well, so we know which are the most popular. My colleagues Becky and Brona will be monitoring the question stream behind the scenes. As you see, we have a hashtag for today's event, which will be posted in the chat room, as well as being displayed on the screen behind me. And above the hashtag, you'll see a QR code that links to a short survey when scanned. So we would very much welcome your feedback and the opportunity to stay connected with you after this event. The only other bit of housekeeping is to remind everyone that cameras will be off, microphones muted, and this is a recorded session, and we will make this recording available after the event. Our goal today is very much to share with you what we've learned through Connecting STEM Teachers, highlight its best practices, and hopefully encourage you to consider adopting some of the key aspects of the programme when working with schools, whether that's individually, in small groups, or within large networks. So thanks very much again for joining us. I'll now pass over to Becky for a few minutes of pre-presentation questions, and over to you, Becky.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm feeling the pressure because Scott said we're going to try and make it as interactive as possible, and I feel like a lot of that interactivity has fallen to me. So we're going to kick things off, and this is where I'm hoping that the technology works. We've just got a little bit of a poll and a couple of questions that we're going to do on Slido, just to see who's actually here with us in the room and to give us some useful, I think, feedback in terms of what you're already engaged in terms of educational networks, and just trying to get a bit of a sense of what everybody is looking to get out of this session as well. So a nice easy poll question should have just popped up on your screens, where we would like to get a sense of where everybody is joining us from today. This is fascinating. I can see how many of you are participating. It's currently on 82%, and I know other webinars that I've been a part of, people like to use about 80% as the threshold for getting everybody to respond. We're on about 80% or 88%. Southeast of England coming through strongly, and good representation from Scotland as well. And the southwest letting us down a little bit, I think. So we're on 89%. what I'm going to do is end the poll. That's really, really useful to kind of see who is engaging with us from where. I'm going to end the poll. Share the results on your screen if you want to get a sense of where people are joining us from. And then I'm going to stop sharing that one. And what I'm going to do now is I am going to share a link in the chat to a Slido. And I'm also going to share my screen as well, where you should be able to scan a QR code uh, where the first question that we would like to get from you is what sector are you joining us from this afternoon? So we open this webinar up to people from a variety of different sectors. So some of the people that funded Connecting STEM Teachers have been invited. We know that we've got a lot of teachers that are joining us today. So we're just looking to get a sense of actually, if you're on the webinar, kind of what is your background? What is your employment and where are you joining us from? So you should be able to see the answers as they're coming up on the screen, kind of looking to see what people are involved in. I'll just give it a little while longer. So we've got about 18 people that have responded so far. STEM engagement, predictably, coming through very, very strongly. But also really interesting to see that we've got people from industry. So actually sort of working within engineering. Hopefully what you're going to get from this is that, you'll get some good practical insights on how to build up these networks so that you can go and spread the word about what it is that you do. Small business running STEM workshops. Brilliant. So it looks as though more or less everybody has finished responding to that one. So real mix of people. Obviously, STEM outreach, STEM engagement coming through very, very strongly. But people from education, people from their own sort of outreach businesses coming through as well. Nice. I'm going to move it on to the next question though. So the next question, we want to know actually, if you're already part of some sort of educational network, what phase of education is that working with? So obviously on the other screen, we have people that were working in higher education, for example. So we actually want to get a sense of what phases of education are people involved in. And we've got a few people there who at the moment are not actually involved in any sort of education network. You might take something away today that means that you can go out there into the world and start up your own network. Okay, so unsurprisingly, I think secondary coming through very strongly. The last question before we actually sort of hear from Claire and from Tuba, what would you like to learn from this webinar? So when the invite landed in your inbox, what was it that you were hoping to get out of joining us this afternoon? Okay, loads of things starting to pop up now. So we'll oh, that's clever. I did not know that the Slido did that. So starting to sort of group things together depending on what it is that you've mentioned. So how to build an effective network. I think that is probably something that's going to come across quite strongly as we get into the content of the session. So how to engage and measure engagements, how to build partnerships across different schools and across industry, gain an insight into good practice and to explore different methods of engagement with teachers, how to raise the importance of engineering in schools. That is what we are all trying to do, I think. How to connect with lots of teachers and their networks so we can get STEM material into lots of schools. Okay. What support STEM teachers need. Yeah. I'd like to find employers who would like to collaborate on STEM outreach to schools. The future of programs like Connecting STEM Teachers. Great, lots of really good stuff that has been shared there. The impact of CST in the future. So presumably what next for the Royal Academy of Engineering, how to get engineering on the curriculum. Brilliant. Okay. I can see that there is one person typing. I'm going to give them a chance to finish up. And we will make connecting with STEM teachers and leads at different levels. Brilliant. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. That is really, really useful stuff. And it's great to hear what everybody is hoping to get out of the session that we're doing this afternoon. And I think when we follow up with everybody after the session as well, we can make some of the results of this available so that you can go back and see what ideas everybody was sharing. So without further ado then, let's get into it. So I'm going to hand back to Scott.
Thanks very much, Becky. And yes, we will share the results of the poll, the questions, along with the video, as I said later. So it is my great pleasure to introduce Clare and Tuba. Clare Gartland is Associate Professor in Education at the University of Suffolk. Her research focuses on social justice in education and equitable strategies to support cross-sector progression, particularly in STEM education. Clare has led projects in the UK, the USA, and across Europe, collaborating with organisations such as Engineering UK, Cambridge University, British Telecom, and of course the Royal Academy of Engineering. Tuba is an honorary research fellow at UCL Institute of Education and a researcher specialising in STEM education and inclusive approaches to addressing education inequalities. So she is currently an impact and evaluation manager in partnership with the University of Essex. And in her recent role at the University of Suffolk, Tuba explored the impact of the Connecting STEM Teachers programme and contributed to the EU-funded Erasmus Plus project. So Clare and Tuba, thank you very much for being with us today. The room is now yours.
Thank you, Scott, and apologies, scrambling to get here because my builders rather unhelpfully managed to trip the switch so that my internet stopped working like 2 minutes before this started. So apologies for causing a slight delay there. So yeah, Tuba and I are going to talk through the findings from, this is actually the third phase of research and evaluation of the Connecting STEM Teachers programme. And we were looking in this stage at the operation of the teacher networks and what made those effective. So if you have the next slide, please. So obviously, I think everybody here, by the looks of things, is aware of the need to meet the STEM challenge. Obviously, there's a need for more STEM skills with a move particularly to the green economy. And there's a massive inequalities in terms of who accesses STEM and who progresses into STEM careers. But beyond that, there's a real need to ensure that all students are engaged and informed, because it's important that every child and every adult, knows about these subject disciplines. So an obvious way to address these challenges is to provide CPD for teachers. It's a cost-effective way to reaching large numbers of young people. And that can be done through continuing professional development or learning networks and communities. And there's a lot of the teacher CPD focuses on single subject disciplines. So there's also a need to embed sort of more inclusive, more interdisciplinary approaches that's rooted in real world problems. And engineering really provides a valuable umbrella to support that and to provide those real world contexts within which, you know, technology, science and maths understanding in those disciplines can be built. So the Connecting STEM Teachers was developed obviously over a decade ago, but it was designed to meet some of these needs. Now, increasingly, I think we're discovering that resource networks of people is a more effective mechanism in terms of supporting professional development than top-down approaches. So the Connecting STEM Teachers programme really is a useful example of how that can operate. So hopefully we can sort of pull out some of the ways in which that was effective in our talk today. If we can have the next slide, please. So just to talk you very briefly through what we did, we first of all undertook a literature review, and that was quite broad in focus because we kept sort of finding other areas we felt we needed to sort of dig into. So we looked very broadly at STEM CPD, teacher communities and networks, and inclusive STEM pedagogies. We also looked at online CPD and online networks because actually COVID happened in the middle of the evaluation, so that was quite an interesting experiment in looking at how this sort of program works in an online environment. We undertook qualitative case studies and we were looking at models of communication in the different networks, factors contributing to engagement, effects of TC training and collaboration, you know, the supports, challenges and barriers to developing more effective networks, and the impact that they had on teachers in terms of both their sort of self-efficacy in STEM and their confidence and then their practices in schools. So just the next slide, I'll just explain the methods very briefly. We held interview conversations with TCs from networks across the UK, and that was a total number of 13 TCs we talked to. And then we honed in on 9 networks, and we identified them according to sort of location, but also length of experience, subject specialism, and the kind of geographical location in terms of rural and urban, as well as distribution across the UK. We observed network activity and then held interviews with 2 or 3 teachers from each network. The interviews were then transcribed and data was coded and analysed thematically. And then we refined those themes through our engagement with the literature. One thing I would say is that we were looking to find out what contributed to the most effective networks. So we were sort of purposefully selected networks that were seen to be effective for a number of reasons. If we can move on to the next slide, that would be great. So in terms of findings, we've come up with a model from this research. Now, this isn't a sort of step model. It's all of these elements need to be considered at both the sort of starting point of setting up a network and as the network develops. And if we go on to the next slide, I'll just talk you through these 5 components. So there are sort of 5 components that we've identified. The first one is around building a community, so network formation and structure. So you need to build a community with shared focus and objectives. You need to establish trusting relationships through facilitated collaboration and opportunities to share expertise and build social capital and teacher self-efficacy in STEM. In terms of network meetings, we found, and the literature supports this, that these really need to be practical in content, hands-on, and we found the hands-on activities and usable resources played a very important part. There needs to be opportunities for discussion and reflection, and it's valuable also to have links to other STEM networks and resources to sort of broaden the social capital that people have access to. If we go on to the next slide. Additionally, you need effective network leadership. So network leaders need to have relevant teaching and STEM expertise, and they need to be able to model practice and build relationships and effectively build relationships and communities. Then working with school leadership teams is really important. Working with senior leaderships can influence whole school engagement with STEM, and working with middle leaders can support dissemination and influence curricula. So while it's valuable to have a bottom-up approach to this and engage teachers, to actually embed it, you need to engage with middle and senior leaders as well. And importantly, networks need to be appropriate for location and context. That there needs to be an understanding of the local context and geography. It's much more impactful if you can work with other existing networks rather than just impose a new model on that's the same across different regions. So connecting with existing networks and communities was found to be really valuable. If we can go on to the next slide. So just to go into those areas in a little more detail, and I'll start, and I'm going to hand over to Tuba to carry on with that. So the first area that I'll go into is network formation and structure. So much of the literature talks about communities of practice or professional learning communities or even professional learning networks. Now, these are all different concepts. Communities of practice and professional learning communities generally describe relatively close-knit teacher communities, whereas professional learning networks are broadly less close-knit collaborations, and they're usually outside of teachers' normal communities. But underpinning all of those models is a theory of social capital, which is a focus on how people gain access to expertise from other people through membership of a group. So this body of literature tells us that there are different ways to develop communities to build social capital, but to be effective, communities need to be long-term. The quality of relationships is important, the sense of ownership of networks, and that members share objectives, values, and beliefs is important. And it's valuable to have a core group of teachers to embed knowledge and to ensure the longevity of networks. So findings from the CST programs have really reinforced much of the findings that we'd read in the wider literature. The quantitative study that actually took place before we did this qualitative study highlighted that longer term engagement networks were significant to developing teachers' efficacy in STEM pedagogies. We also discovered through our conversations with TCs and teachers that it's very important to pay attention to how people are connected in these networks. So as with the wider literature, we found that a core group in networks with a strong belief in student-centered learning was valuable, and it was quite common in the CST networks. And that really helped to build trusting relationships, which was vital in creating a safe space where teachers could share expertise. And that safe space was important in enabling teachers from different subject areas, with different levels of expertise, NQTs, people that have been teaching for years, for them to sort of join together and share their knowledge. Often you find it with networks, the literature tells us that expertise is shared quite randomly. So having a more systematic approach to sharing that is really valuable. If we go to the next slide. So the next point was about network meetings. So creating and sustaining networks obviously is really challenging. Teachers are very busy people, and them attending repeatedly, going to meetings is always going to be a challenge. So our findings were that actually having the meetings, there was mixed findings around this in terms of the regularity of the meetings and when they took place. The CST meetings only happened once a term, and they took place at the end of the school day. But teachers clearly valued this because they went. So that it had to be voluntary, it wasn't part of their working day. They attended after their working day. And findings from the programme indicated that they were keen to learn from other members, and they liked having the opportunity to talk to other members and share their experiences. But the resources were also a huge motivator for attendance and for driving action in schools. And teachers having the opportunity to try out resources in meetings and then hit the ground running with those resources in schools was really valued by teachers. Again, in terms of I've said having a strong core group was really valuable in building those trusting relationships, but also having external sources of information like from STEMnet and other local STEM organisations was really valued by participants and helped them sort of develop new ideas about what they could do in their teaching. I think it's really important to note, and our research sort of reinforces this, that top-down approaches to network formation really don't work. It has to be a mix. You have to have that sort of input from a top-down, but you also need a sort of bottom-up activity where members join in and feel empowered to contribute. Okay, I'm going to... Sorry, one more slide from me. Was just again about the hands-on nature of activity. So research widely points to the value of active learning in professional development, and the CST program positioning teachers as students, hands-on, trying out resources during network meetings was really valued. And that was especially found to be valuable when teachers were working in unfamiliar areas. So, for example, coding for a biology teacher, saying that they hadn't wanted to try that before, but having tried this out in that safe space in the network meetings, they felt that they could then take that into their classroom. Opportunities for discussion, reflection on resources and activities enabled teachers to consider how to embed resources in their curricula and supported teachers in planning activity, and actually at times really challenged teachers to think differently about their own practice. And some TCs were sort of purposefully matching teachers to ensure expertise was shared. For example, secondary teachers with expertise in teaching programming were supporting primary school teachers. And benefits have been identified in supporting collaborations between teachers from different backgrounds. So from different subject areas, different sectors and different ages, who have different levels of expertise. And often in meetings, people are naturally drawn to other people like them in terms of subject discipline, age. So network leaders sort of take an active role in helping people to engage with different people is a valuable way forward. Evaluations also pointed the benefits for further embedding, I think, more opportunities for reflection in network meetings and more structured opportunities to share practice in using resources. When the programme moved online during COVID, teachers really felt that there was much more limited opportunities for discussion and reflection. And there was, if network activity does have to happen online, and there are clearly benefits to that, and I think Tuba will talk about that in a little while, it's useful to think carefully about how to build opportunities for discussion, reflection, and sort of maybe create buddy systems and things to support people to develop that sort of trusting space that's more effectively created in face-to-face meetings. Right, at this point, I'm going to hand over to Tuba to talk about the next areas.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you very much. And I'll continue with the key findings 3. Can I get the next slide, please? Thank you. And it is about appropriate for location and context. And I would like to talk about the importance of working with existing networks and the importance of geography here. So existing networks can be great leverage and opportunity to start with to build the links upon. And it's important to carefully consider the existing relationships and connections in different regions as well. And This will also help building links with the existing communities and networks. And we just found that this was important to establishing CST teacher networks. And here, geography is also really important, and this is important both in the formation of networks, but also continuity as well. So, for example, the distance between schools is a key consideration in the development of networks, especially when we think about teachers. These teachers from schools usually come together after school hours. So when the distance is like further to reach to come together, it's a barrier for that. And this was very much more happening like in the rural areas where the schools are further away from each other, for example. And of course, here actually online programs or hybrid programs would help, but we also need to keep in mind that distance makes distance makes face-to-face meetings challenging, but teachers need that face-to-face interactions to support and support the development of trusting relationships. And here I would like to read this quote. For example, we are very close to university, and they are engineering department, and they are hoping to grow, an IT department that they are hoping to grow. And our local employers are also very supportive. We have businesses that were started locally and that have a presence all over the world now. And they want our young people to come down and take those roles. So they are super supportive of the schools and supportive of the event, of any events that I have run. So this quote is kind of, it illustrates both of those points, like working with existing networks, but also understanding the geography. So here in this, in this area, we can see universities can be good allies, and there are some existing connections, and seeing also the understanding the local needs and priorities is also key. So these are the important elements of existing networks and the geography. Can I get the next slide, please? And this key finding is about working with school leadership teams, engaging senior leaders actually influence the whole school participation, and this is partly because like senior leaders can designate responsibilities and set the agenda in the schools. And important consideration is also like working with multi-academic trusts, MATs, and both working with senior leaderships in MATs was significant to engage schools and ensure their sustained involvement in the CST networks. Because this was also like, in terms of like sharing curricula and professional development opportunities across the trust schools, for example, this can actually ensure the influence the teaching practice, influence the teaching practice through the network meetings. And while senior leadership's important, also like the middle leaders appear to be really important. Middle management can be key members of the networks, and this is particularly in secondary schools, and they can delegate to other teachers in their schools to support teachers and share and embed the activities in curricula. And I would like to also read this quote for you. And this quote illustrates how SLT support important, even just joining the team meetings and receiving resources. So this one particularly, I'll read all of it. The VP of the MAT I mentioned, she's very good. They've got primaries, secondaries. secondaries in their MAT, and she is the one who gets the schools to come in. I think having SLT on board is hugely important because they've got the influence to be able to go. One of you is going to a meeting, one of you needs to get the resource box. As you can see, like implementation of those resources and the curriculum elements, it's important to go to, like, through the senior leadership teams as well. Can I get the next slide, please? And this is about effective network leadership. And these are the characteristics of effective network leadership. So relevant teaching and STEM expertise, and also modeling practice and building communities. So teachers value the expertise of fellow teachers or ex-teachers who understand the realities of life in schools. And it is important that coordinators with relevant teaching and STEM expertise, this help teachers to learn from them as well. So actually, this is also partly like modeling practice. Some theses, for example, in our study, some theses promoted reflection on the use of CSD resources and modeled the effective practice. And this was like enriched with their own experiences, knowing the realities of school lives. So these opportunities bring more chances the teachers in the networks to use that as it is or fit that into their setting as well. So need for network leaders to carefully negotiate and support the building of relationships and trust, and also mentoring, sharing leaderships, and creating a shared sense of ownership as well, and encouraging members to work together to share knowledge and experience. And this quote illustrates the importance of modeling, mentoring, and shared sense of ownership as well. So can I get the next slide, please? I'm just worried about the time a little bit, so I'm just trying to be quick. So here I would like to quickly summarize our key learnings. As you can see, our key learnings are all connected and support each other. Each insight not only stands stands on its own, but also relies on the others to create an effective STEM teacher network. And they all show the value of professional learning networks for teacher and enhancing teachers. These efforts support enhancing teachers' confidence, knowledge, ability to deliver innovative teaching practices. However, creating teacher network is challenging for sure. And these are some important characteristics to overcome those challenges. So like characteristics of best practices, building teaching communities with shared goals, providing practical content, resources, hands-on activities, and opportunities for discussion and reflection, and tailoring network activity with the specific activity to the specific location and context, and importance of coordinators with relevant expertise, and engaging senior leaders and collaborating with middle leaders as well. So next slide, please. I think I can wrap up our presentation here, and I would like to thank you all for your time and attention. And I hope you found the discussion of our key findings insightful. And now we are happy to open the floor for questions or any thoughts you may have, any comments you would like to, and we would like to hear those. I think we are using the chat box for that as well. So thank you very much. And I think we can briefly have our questions before moving to Kate, but I'm careful about time. So Becky, please try to.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you for that. So yes,
manage it. Thank you.
with time being of the essence. So we have one question that has come in through the Q&A. I think you touched on it a little bit, and it might be something that Kate can talk about when she comes on as well. But there's a question here about like, has the venue for having network meetings changed since COVID? So obviously there was this switch from doing things very, very much kind of like in person to everything going online for COVID. So the question was, are there more online meetings? I guess as like a hangover for that. And do we feel like they work as well in person? Or yeah, do we feel like they work as well online compared to in person?
Shall I start, Tuba, and then you?
Yes, please.
I think sort of both the research and what we found in our research into the CST networks was that they're not as effective for building those trusting relationships where people feel at ease to share their experiences and share their practice, and to for people to really change their practices. That's very, very important. For them to be able to reflect and share and discuss and actually think through how they could do things differently. So I think that's the problem with online. It's difficult to recreate an environment where people can build those trusting relationships, but because it happens over a cup of tea and a biscuit, where people are just saying, oh, I've had a nightmare this week, or that's been tricky, or how would you do that? And it's hard to replicate that. Now, having said that, people were using strategies to try and replicate that. And some of those are quite successful, and did manage to maintain those sort of more community feeling in meetings, but it is more challenging online.
Yeah.
Tuba, do you want to add anything to that?
I might actually maybe add about like also the exchange of like expertise. So what I see like with the Royal Academy of Engineering resources, it's like meant to be like interdisciplinary. So what I see like when the meetings are online, and actually, the Royal Academy of Engineering did a very clever thing to send the resources before the online meeting so that the teachers can play with those, which was a great intervention. But in comparison with the face-to-face, there was an element of exchanging expertise and like upskilling each other. So, for example, a biology teacher who have no experience of coding, but the resource itself brings coding and biology together. So they learn from each other, and it is easier for them to play together there and then bring that to the classroom. So I think that is really missing in face-to-face meetings. But of course, that was something like we also found out, like online brings some inclusivity in terms of like, let's say, like having care responsibilities for teachers who love to join those meetings, cannot make it after school. So for example, having that opportunity to join online, maybe it's not building lots of trust or exchanging expertise, but still makes them to be part of it. So that was kind of my perception, what I remember.
So pros and cons to both of them in a way, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Very quickly then, we'll do one more. So Michelle has asked, how can STEM outreach non-profits effectively support teacher CPD networks? So I guess this is kind of thinking about bringing in, and tapping into those existing networks and other resources that are available. So how could, outreach organizations support CPD?
Yeah, I mean, what you've said, I think collaboration is key, and looking at what networks are already in particular geographic regions and locations, and how you can work with what's there already, I think is a really vital strategy. I think trying to set up new networks independent of that and not knowing what's happening already, and you, especially with multi-academy trusts. Now, obviously, multi-academy trusts, as Tuba was saying, they can be supportive of bringing stuff into the curriculum, new ideas into the curriculum, potentially, but they can also act as a block because where curricula is set at a senior level in a multi-academy trust, teachers are disempowered by that. So I would say sort of potentially working with multi-academy trusts, would be a way of having reach. But you'd have to work with senior leaders in multi-academy trusts and middle leaders to make sure that you can actually affect change in curricula.
So kind of, I guess, a little bit of knowing who to go to and
and
not
knowing your
trying
local,
to reinvent the wheel as well, and working with
knowing your local area, I think,
Yeah. Nice. Okay. We'll have another opportunity for Q&A later. But I think if we move on then to the next part of the session. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for listening.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, sorry, I was just unmuting myself. Yeah, thank you, Becky. Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Tuba. There's certainly aspects of those questions that Claire and sorry, Kate and I can answer from our perspective as being teacher coordinators of the program a little bit later. But yeah, for now, thanks very much for that. And I'd like to introduce Kate, who's going to be sharing her experience as a teacher coordinator, her involvement with the Connecting STEM Teachers program, and the lasting impact of that. During her teaching career, Kate has been head of design and technology and subject specialist at the Inspiration Trust for 7 years. She was a teacher coordinator for CST, Connecting STEM Teachers, leading CPD teacher training and fostering collaborations with regional and national stakeholders to enhance STEM education and inspire young learners. Amongst her many achievement, Kate developed subject knowledge enhancement courses for trainee teachers, and this summer launched the first ever D&T Big Meet in partnership with STEM Learning, which attracted over 600 delegates. I went along. It was fantastic. Well done, Kate. Over to you.
Thank you. Has somebody got my presentation? It's okay if not.
We do.
So just while that comes up, hello, my name is Kate Finley. I'm head of D&T at Heatherset Academy. I am also I look after design technology across our Academy Trust, which is in the east of England. So I'm just going to take you through sort of my view as a TC programme, and also we've got some of my colleagues who are on the call as well. So that's a bit nerve-wracking. Next slide, please. Somebody will do that in a minute. Thank you. So when I joined the teacher coordinator program 7 years ago, it was very much about, here is the resource that we're delivering. We're building networks. We're helping schools who are EDI schools specifically, but also giving students opportunities to see themselves in a future in engineering and what that might look like, and also what the concept for engineering is. I'm a design and technology teacher, and very quickly I realised that science, technology, engineering and maths, what was happening 8 years ago, pre-COVID, was that we were going very much in a direct instruction route in schools and knowledge-rich curriculum. And what that meant, the practical applications for that, for core subjects like science and maths, and for design and technology as well, is that a lot of the extra bits that a curriculum would deliver, like extracurricular and cross-curricular, like cross-curricular in schools, was stopping happening, and worst case scenario wasn't happening at all. A lot of that extra went. And when we're talking about a subject like STEM in a school, science, technology, engineering and maths, those departments stop talking to each other. So when I did my networking meetings, I was finding that I was getting departments where they don't talk to science or they don't talk to maths. So one of the approaches I took in that to support those schools was that I would, and this might answer the question that somebody asked previously, we went around different schools. So we started it at Heatherset to start with, at my school, because that was nice and easy for me to control. And then I got to know a couple of really keen teachers and said, would you mind hosting? And they were like, oh, I'll ask my head. So I would write with the Royal Academy logo at the top. I would write a lovely email to the head saying that we're really impressed that their teachers engaging with the network, and we've got this opportunity to deliver at the school, and I can invite as many science and maths teachers as possible. And then all of a sudden what you find is when you go on to the next school, somebody's offering up their space as well. And that was really lovely to be able to share ownership, because driving a network, you can't be the only person to do that. So along the pictures are some of the impacts, and Dan's on the call, so how wonderful. I used the picture of him because I didn't know anything about neon engineering until we did work with the Royal Academy, and some of my colleagues were part of helping support them in that as well. But through our networks, we were also able to offer time and space to things like competitions, to things like offering CPD, to supporting teachers who were the only teacher in their department. So there's a lovely picture of Amanda there, and she's out on the North Norfolk coast, all on her own, doing the most amazing things. And whilst we didn't have a network meeting there, she was able to contribute as well by those small conversations, by the biscuits and the cups of tea, but also just with 10 minutes going, can you talk about how you did that? We also engaged in competitions. You can see on the left there's a competition with Apito, and that has run since the TC network finished, and therefore that network is still moving forward because the tools we learned to engage with each other and to engage with industry, we're still using. So I want to talk a little bit more about what a network meeting might look like and also the impact that it has from my point of view. So next slide, please. Oh, no, I'm not. I'm going to talk about the resources first. So I went down a rabbit hole. We had a resource about, I reckon it was the year before COVID happened, that talked about diversity and biodegradable materials. And it was amazing. And a lot of it was science driven as well. So it was really new information for me, but I could totally see where this was relevant in my teaching for design and technology. Above the R, there is some biodegradable plastic. And my colleagues at the Academy will remember a story I told. You can use your imagination. We needed some glycerin, and you can buy it in very small capsules. Now, I didn't tell my students what those capsules were for. They just imagined that I'd weighed them out for them. But we had amazing time developing. So using the great resources that were produced, current content, context for them so the students could see the career pathways. The later resources post-COVID, we were looking at specific people in industry. So pupils could see themselves in other people from all walks of life doing the most amazing jobs. Using mycelium, I'd never used that before. And I was able to work with another teacher who was doing post-16, and we were both having a chat about how we were getting on with it, the disasters we'd had, beyond the resources. And I think that's really important to state here, the quality of the resources. It was mentioned earlier, but you could pick those resources up and they were ready to go, and you could do nothing with them and you could deliver them. But you also could add to it. You could discuss it with your teachers. And as our network meetings developed, we took time to reflect on what we had done in our teaching. This is subject-specific CPD that you just do not get on a termly basis in a school, especially with the industry input. Okay, next slide. Thank you. So for me, there is a wider impact to the network, but I wanted to make sure that I touched on things that I thought made these networks the most amazing thing. I cannot stress how awesome the people behind the resources were. Everything was specifically mapped to curriculum content, not just at Key Stage 3, but also Key Stage 4. Resources were easy to follow. There was support for teachers, there was support for students. So no matter what the subject knowledge of the teacher was, there was the appropriate level of support there. And obviously, you've got your network there to help you too. As a design and technology teacher, I never felt like, even though there was a maths challenge or a science piece of work, that I couldn't do that. And actually, I enjoyed the challenge of engaging with that in my teaching. It kept my teaching fresh. And it meant that I wasn't spending all that energy looking online for cool stuff that's coming up, because it was coming through my door before I was seeing it online. So those current industry inputs and examples were really key for me, and that's what made it quality. And I know that's what sold it and brought those people to our network meetings. Really important one there at the bottom. Our network was built of teachers who teach. Some of them might have been heads of year, or they might have done things for their trusts. But what was really important there is that they were all teachers. They were all standing in front of their classes delivering this. And sometimes what you get with some networks and some industry-led things is that the people in front of you they might have experience of working with children, but they're not currently trying to get that into the curriculum. And I think what was really nice for us as coordinators, and some of my colleagues might say the same, is we might try something and go, do you know what, this would be better like this. And by adding things to it, it meant that we could put an input at a point in which it was most impactful. There really was a solid range of science, DT, engineering and maths teachers involved in the networks. And you'd have for some networks, there were slightly more science teachers, or maybe there were slightly more design and technology teachers. But when we all came together as a TC network, there was a brilliant wealth of experience. And very much so, and this was said in the report by Tuba and Clare, it was highly impactful for pupils and staff. The level of effort put in by the members of staff for the amount of for the impact that was received was intense. And there are still resources that I am using in my teaching, which I know is the best way to teach it. And that there are things that I have learned from this, especially things like the renewable energy sector, where my students have gone off to do they've gone off to do T levels, T levels. They've gone off to do T levels. And one of my students is in South Wales now, and she's doing a degree apprentice. And I know that's of a direct impact between the work that we have done. Okay, so next slide, please. Thank you. So just sort of as we come to a little bit of a close, for me, that top right, if you are out there and you are a senior leader in your school and you're thinking, you know, I want to keep my departments together. If you're a teacher, you do not have to be a head of department. I know I am, but when I started this journey, I wasn't. So you don't have, that isn't the progression you have to have. You don't have to be a head of year, you have to do an assistant principal. You can love your subject. And for me, it's the extras that a strong network brings. Not all teachers want career development that involves being a head of department or a head of year. Some teachers just love their subject. And I feel like our teacher network that the Royal Academy brought together, it really was like Avengers Assemble. And we weren't all the same. We were all very different, but we shared a passion of our subject. We shared an opportunity to sell STEM to our children as an opportunity for social mobility and an opportunity for them to see themselves in other people. And I just put some examples of things. None of these things would have happened without the network, and none of them were a direct output that the Royal Academy were expecting us to do. But, you know, Arduino hand robots, working with renewable companies, national competitions, we did win it, but it was amazing. And having the confidence to be different. So for teachers on their own, if you're in charge of teachers, you want to keep those teachers, you know, getting them to start networks. It's you know, a packet of digestive biscuits doesn't cost a lot, but the impact of coming together face to face is really an amazing experience. And whilst the program has ended, or as it is now, the impact and the legacy of it definitely continues, not only in the coordinators that run it, but also in the schools and the networks that have engaged in it. So just finally, on my last slide, I've just put on there my email address. If anybody wants to get in contact or wants any more information about anything I've done, you can find me on Twitter or X under Made in Heatherset, or my email address is on the slide for you. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Kate. That was fantastic. And just for the record, if there was some nitroglycerin in one of our boxes, I certainly didn't put it in there. I've done an awful job at keeping us all to time today, but I hope you agree that it was worth going over a little bit because of just how rich some of the presentations were today. We were going to finish off with a question, but we've decided to try and stick to time, and I've moved that question into the survey so it doesn't get lost. So we're going to call a close to the website site in a moment. But before I do, just thanks for everyone for your time today and for being so engaged. There was lots and lots of questions that came through towards the end. What I will do is, I don't want those to get lost, so I will do my best after this meeting to reply and share those responses with you in some form. If you have any further questions, feel free to get in contact with me. I've put my email address in the chat room. So is the link to the survey, as well as the QR code behind me. So please take 5 minutes to give us your feedback. We'd really appreciate that. And all that's left to me is say thank you. Thank you for joining us. A special thanks to our speakers, Kate, Claire, and Tuba, for such an insightful session. Thank you to my colleagues, Becky, Brona, who've ensured everything ran smoothly in the background from start to finish. Keep an eye out for the recording of today's webinar on the Academy's website, and feel free to share this recording as well with colleagues who you may be interested in. I've also put in a link in the chat to the key learning report, which Claire and Tuba produced as well, and that will be also on the Connecting STEM Teachers page on the website. So thanks very much for taking part. Very much look forward to staying in touch, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you. Goodbye.